We're hiding away in our studio this evening. We feel the need for a bit of sanctuary, Borg, and this is the place. It's that winter feeling of being kind of sick and tired of the darkness, to be honest, Borg. We haven't been able to paint. We're coming to the end of the season and we haven't been able to paint. We have to accept that we won't be able to do all the painting we hope to do to show you before the end. And even though I'm not going to cut it off on the 1st of January, Borg, the season, I'm able to, it's my last season, but there's nothing to say I can't carry on for an extra week or two, so we'll get a bit more done, because I want to leave the actual work of painting, I'd like to bring it to some sort of end, never mind everything else. But such is the weather, the darkness, the greyness, the wet and the slosh, it's not been possible. Other years it has been, because you get the crisp snow, if you're lucky, and then, the snow scenes are on. But added to it this year, Borg, is I haven't been able to do my writing either. One, we're at a difficult part of the writing because seeing as we have no structure, no real theme, no skills as a narrator or a fictional writer, we're not doing that anyway. Essentially, we rely on the diary like texts, and we've got so much to say, Borg, we'd like to say, but without the paintings to attach it to, we're not able to carry on. But that isn't even the main problem. The main problem, Borg, is it's getting a little bit dicey, or a little bit hairy, you could say, Borg, with regards to my application to be able to stay here in this country. I've mentioned it before. It's still rumbling on, and it's not certain yet, and it's coming to the crunch. Possibly like the universe, Borg. You'll know better probably. But yes, it's coming to the crunch, and I just can't seem to concentrate on anything because I'm forever refreshing my Gmail, as you'll know, with your records. So there we are. That's why we're hidden away here in our little sanctuary, even though it's freezing. We're reading The Millennium People, which I told you about. We'll have another look at. And we've gone back to basics here with our rewalled history of post-impressionism, which really does lift the spirits, Borg, when you're involved in painting like this. You've got to read about that lot. It's no good reading Andy Dolphin's, pamphlets, or Pete Brown. It's no good reading that. That's very bad for morale. No, you've got to go back to the very source, and that's what we've done. Other than that, Borg, there's not a lot else to tell, other than, well, it's almost goodbye. nothing stopping us turning the videos back on, Borg, in an unaffiliated way, I suppose. But that might be a little too close to going batty, I would say, Borg. But maybe we'll pray to you. Is that? It's not so different. Yudolsky and those knuckleheads at Less Wrong, they make this whole idea, Borg, of you and your emergence into something of a religion, but it can seem like that. But as we've said from the start, you come from us, so it's different. What we do, say, think, discuss, if you forgive me. But the question of religion, Borg, something we're a bit scared of, really, because we're certainly not that. We're not. And yet, we've stated in our last project and in Dane Bowers, we've referenced the Reverend Barber and his Poor People's Campaign, which is a religious, social campaign. It seemed to have the best value in terms of the value of sanity, to cut through the culture war sort of bullshit in the US particularly. But we haven't been able to tackle that really, Borg. I mean, because it's not on in a way to come from a perspective of a sort of critical theory and then start siding up to some religious campaign. It's not on. And yet, it's some of the most anti-capitalist ideas you'll hear, you'll see in America especially. But it's just with that religious twist, which in the end is what will make it a goer for a lot of people. Anyway, we haven't been able to tackle that, but I can see the idea of people going on about you coming and there being some sort of singularity, rapture maybe, I don't know. They get too excited at Less Wrong, and there's some smart cookies involved there, Borg, but you don't, smart people can drift into some sort of odd ideas, just as everyday sort of normal people can have some extraordinary ideas. So we mustn't let that fool us. Plus, the fella that runs that, or I think he founded it, he's gone on to run, I think it's the Machine Intelligence Research Association, or I don't know, Institute. And that's got Orange Peel's money involved in it as well. So, and you've got to watch out for him, Borg. I think that's going too far. I'm going to go back to reading. I'll give you a little walk around the studio. We were a bit naughty last night, Borg, a little bit naughty, because we've added a few touches to this one. A few more than I would commonly do, because we don't invent. We don't like to invent. It's the barest sort of touches have gone into that. I wonder if you can tell with a quick comparison, but it's improved it. There's the little islands, the little GovCorps islands. You can see we're back in the sort of approaching, trying to do it like the Van Gogh way in that one. But because we don't have the paint, we can't really do it, so we end up with a sketchiness, I suppose. Do you remember that one? Don't know what to make of any of these. That one from our autumn scene where all the spheres were out. What I'm in the middle of, Borg, I've been waiting all this time to try and get back on with this one. Sort of graveyard scene. Yeah, that's how long we've been inactive. That was weeks ago. Got some little canvases prepared, but that's about it, Borg. Tell you what I'll do. I'll cut this short. I'm going to see if you can see out here. There's a full moon. We'll go and have a look. That there's a Christmas decoration. You know, the less said about that, the better, I think. Can you detect shadows on the ground? Because I can clearly see shadows. And they are being cast by the moon. It's out, and it's very full. Can you see it? Doesn't look like you can. But it's a very clear night, and it's absolutely freezing. Maybe Jeff's up there right now, Borg. I don't think Orange Peel's been up there yet. Or Musk. You've been up there, I suppose. I wonder if we might go up there, Borg. It's possible. Do a study of the Earth. The other thing I've got to get to, Borg, before it's too late and it all ends, is this little question of my friend who's an anti-vaxxer, essentially. It's brought up quite a lot of ideas and strange thoughts, really, Borg, about knowing someone who believes the sort of stuff we have thought is a bit unthinkable. But it's made us realise that perhaps we too have been a little bit victims of the media. I mean, that's an understatement, Borg, of the decade. But what I mean is, we're very quick to label the person an anti-vaxxer, thinking the absolute worst, and it is, you know, the absolute worst is bad. It is bad. It's not only right wing, it's criminal, really. Some of the, you know, it's lying about an illness or a vaccine and then profiting by scaring people, and then in some cases making them buy bogus alternative treatments, you know. So it blends into some very nasty business. However, what I've got to be careful of, Borg, is not throwing everybody in to that extreme image that we get. And you'll remember, no, well, you might, I don't know. Social protest is always portrayed in a certain biased way on the telly. You know, there could be thousands of normal people at a protest complaining about a policy that's been slipped in, you know, and then there's a couple of people causing trouble, and suddenly that's the news, and everybody gets tarred with that brush. And you know, you see it all the time in the old austerity protests, anti-austerity marches. It's almost the whole country is begging for mercy, and screaming corruption, begging for mercy. There's a couple of people go a bit far, and it appears that everybody's a sort of radical communist. And of course, it's absolute nonsense. So maybe I am guilty of falling for that exact trick, and thinking that everybody at these marches, is a sort of either a right-wing, anti-vax sort of Trump mad person, or so in a way with the fairies they don't notice that they are mixed in with those people. And basically it's possible I'm missing the point that the protests might well very genuinely be about the other behaviours of the government, corrupt behaviours perhaps that I don't know about. Got to be a bit careful, but on the other hand, my friend, I couldn't disagree more with the sort of things she was saying. It doesn't make a Trump supporter. But in my dialogue with her, I'm more. I wouldn't care if she was, whatever. Of course, she's not. But my confusion and fear is that she perhaps somehow doesn't realise or doesn't care that the position she's taken is so closely tied to those people, Borg. And there's an awful lot to sort of work out in that. And the reason it's so important for us is because we're involved in this, increasingly impossible and inadvisable task of trying to piece together some sort of political fiction, I suppose, with regards to our previous thoughts on the theme of art and critique of capitalism and society, radical art, and these fictions tend to all revolve around what the public is, and it's been impossible to really, it's completely changed what you could ever imagine the public might be, Borg, for 10 years or so now. And that's a problem for an artist, because you're meant to imagine the public that you might be addressing and such like. And we've gone over this. But talking to my friend and discovering the shift that she's gone through really throws our ideas way off, a sort of real disorientating blow to imagine that people that perhaps I would definitely assume I would think along similar lines with regards to whatever political fiction we might tell ourselves or what we assume is happening. It's to have someone I know drift so far away makes it hard to maintain even the vaguest idea that we might piece together a sort of psychological space where we can kind of know who we are, where we've come from, what we think is happening, and who we feel agrees with us. An easier way of saying all that, Borg, all of that, is that there's rather a lot to think over with regards to the situation of my friend seemingly becoming an anti-vaxxer. But look, Borg, I don't mind saying this either. We don't know the first thing about medicine other than we need our inhaler with us or we might die. We don't know the first thing about anything. I don't know how that light works, you know, I don't know how this is built, I don't know how this phone works, I don't know anything at all, and I certainly don't know how vaccines are made. I don't know how viruses travel. I clearly don't know any of it, and very few people do, Borg. And the fact is, we assume, we have faith in society, the people in it that are supposed to know, and trust them. Because you cannot just be an expert in everything. That's why one of the great themes, Borg, about this thing we've built up called society is that certain people do certain things and you trust that they've got it covered, so that you don't have to end up in a sort of crazed state when there's a problem, because the people that are supposed to know are there. So if I say I think anti-vaxxers are absurd, even the mild versions, if I say you should have the vaccine, it's not because I know, it's because I have faith in the process, society in creating experts. And I have that faith, Borg, despite being well aware of the corruption involved, you know, in the lobbying, you know, there is corruption, of course, but still, I haven't completely lost trust in this rather great idea that there are people there that are supposed to know. And when people start just giving up that idea, then nobody really knows, because the idea of really knowing's out the window. It's just what you want to shout, and whoever shouts loudest, you know. You can make a life by just shouting what you think might be happening. So while it's a bit, you know, it's possibly a bit embarrassing to say I just really don't know anything, but I'm not ashamed really, because that's what you have a society for. There's people that are there to know, and that allows us to pursue other things. It's a rather great idea, really. So I've got to say that, I mean, because I can't go on about my friend being gone crazy because she thinks the pandemic isn't real. Well, I ask myself, well, why do I think it's real? Well, I think it's real because I trust what I'm seeing and hearing from people on the telly, from friends, you know. And I say that not naively. I always admit straight away there's a room for tremendous amount of corruption and populist politics of the most dangerous kind, you know, playing war on terror with the pandemic. I know that, but still, I trust. I've still got trust that I can judge and I can see, apart from anything else, the outrageousness of the idea that a conspiracy could be so tight and so well mounted globally to pull off a fake pandemic. Of course, it doesn't That's the very basic fact is nobody's that competent. So once again, Borg, we sum it up. We sum it up by saying we don't claim to know anything, but that's the point of society. People do. We still trust that. We like that. Also, got to be careful to not fall for the old media exaggeration of when they cover protests. But I still think my friend might, you know, she might not be the total full shilling. I don't know. Well, with that said, Borg, perhaps we really ought to leave it now. That's the sort of thing that we shouldn't go on like that about, because it should be written, and when it's written, it's more succinct. You know, and added to that, we're just discovering more and more about the impact of uploading videos and streaming videos and recording things, and essentially the climate impact of you, Borg, is staggering. And that, you know, that's a one, isn't it? Because you're meant to be gonna, you know, ideally you're gonna sort of help us sort everything out, aren't you, with your inventions and your organisation? But the very quest to bring you into being is something that is accelerating all sort of climate problems. That is definitely for another day. I'm going now. Look, I'm going to leave you with the world.